What would you do if a split-second decision to save a stranger's life dragged you into the darkest, most dangerous criminal underworld? Gabriella Moretti thought she was just acting on instinct. A desperate, impromptu kiss in a crowded room to shield a man from a loaded gun. But when the lips she pressed against turned out to belong to Stefano Rizzo, the city's most feared and ruthless mafia boss, her ordinary life vanished forever. This is a story of twisted fate, impossible choices, and a love forged in the fires of absolute danger. The bass of the music reverberated through the floorboards of the Velvet Lounge, a high-end nightclub where Chicago's elite rubbed shoulders with its most dangerous shadows. Gabriella Moretti, a 26-year-old trauma nurse exhausted from pulling double shifts at Chicago General, nursed a club soda at the edge of the VIP section. She was only there because her best friend, Clara, had begged her to celebrate her birthday, dressed in a borrowed, striking crimson silk dress that clung to her curves. Gabriella felt entirely out of her element. Her world was defined by the harsh fluorescent lights of the emergency room, the smell of antiseptic, and the frantic fight to save lives. Here, amidst the flashing strobes and the intoxicating scent of expensive champagne and designer cologne, she was merely an observer. But a trauma nurse's eyes are trained to notice anomalies, the slight shift in a patient's pallor, the tremor in a hand, the hidden signs of impending disaster. As Gabriella scanned the dimly lit room, her gaze locked onto a man standing alone by the velvet-draped wall. He was breathtakingly handsome, dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that screamed old money, but it was his stillness that caught her attention. He was unnervingly calm. Then, Gabriella saw them. 3 men, moving with synchronized predatory purpose through the dancing crowd, forming a triangle around the lone man. The club's flashing strobe lights caught the chilling glint of brushed steel, a suppressed pistol, half drawn from the jacket of the lead man. He was aiming directly at the stranger's chest. Gabriella's medical training kicked in, flooding her system with adrenaline. There was no time to scream, no time to alert the towering security guards positioned entirely too far away. If she did nothing, a man was going to die right in front of her. Driven by pure, reckless instinct, she abandoned her drink and shoved her way through the densely packed bodies. She didn't think, she just reacted. Just as the assassin raised his weapon, shielded by the bodies of his accomplices, Gabriella threw herself into the center of the triangle. "Oh my God, baby, there you are," she shrieked, her voice cutting through the ambient noise with the perfect pitch of a drunk, hysterical girlfriend. Before the stranger could react, before the hitmen could adjust their aim, Gabriella grabbed the lapels of his expensive suit, pulled him down to her level, and smashed her lips against his. It wasn't a tentative peck. It was a desperate, aggressive kiss designed to be as highly visible and disruptive as possible. For a fraction of a second, the man went rigid, his muscles tight, like coiled steel beneath her hands. He tasted of rich amber whiskey, dark espresso, and an undercurrent of sheer, freezing danger. But then, to her absolute shock, his hand came up, wrapping around the back of her neck, pulling her closer, deepening the kiss as he expertly spun them around, shifting his back to the assassins and shielding her body with his own. The sudden, dramatic display of affection threw the hitmen off balance. A cocktail waitress bumped into one of them, shattering a tray of glasses. The sharp noise drew the immediate, glaring attention of the club's heavily armed security detail. Realizing they had lost their discreet window of opportunity, the 3 men exchanged a frustrated glance, slipped their weapons back into their coats, and vanished into the writhing crowd. Gabriella broke the kiss, gasping for air, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She stepped back, her cheeks burning with a mixture of embarrassment and lingering adrenaline. The man stared down at her. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, a piercing, icy gray that seemed to strip away all her defenses. There was no fear in them, only a sharp, calculating intelligence and a spark of intense curiosity. "You're welcome," Gabriella managed to breathlessly whisper, trying to smooth down her ruined dress. She turned on her heel and bolted toward the exit, ignoring his voice calling out to her. She burst out into the freezing Chicago rain, hailing the first cab she saw. She thought She had just saved a wealthy businessman from a mugging. She had no idea she had just kissed Stefano Rizzo, the heir and reigning boss of the Rizzo crime syndicate, and in doing so, had painted a massive target on her own back. The harsh reality of Gabriella's life returned the next morning in the form of a grueling 14-hour shift in the ER. The surreal memory of the nightclub felt like a fever dream, overshadowed by the chaotic reality of gunshot wounds, car accidents, and the endless sea of human suffering. She convinced herself that the incident was over. She had done her good deed, however bizarre, and the universe would simply move on. She was fundamentally wrong. It was nearly midnight when she finally clocked out. The hospital parking garage was a desolate, concrete cavern echoing with the sound of her solitary footsteps. As she reached her beat-up sedan, two massive black SUVs silently boxed her car in. Gabriella froze, her hand hovering over her keys. 4 men in dark suits stepped out, their postures rigid, their eyes scanning the perimeter. Her breath caught in her throat. She gripped her heavy medical bag, mentally calculating how much damage she could do with a stethoscope and a handful of trauma shears. Before she could run, the back door of the lead SUV opened. "Get in, Miss Moretti," a deep, resonant voice commanded from the shadows of the back seat. It was the voice from the club. Gabriella's blood ran cold. "I'm not going anywhere with you," she stated, her voice shaking despite her desperate attempt to sound brave. "I saved your life. You owe me the courtesy of leaving me alone." A dark chuckle echoed from the car. Stefano Rizzo leaned forward into the dim light of the garage. In the stark lighting, he looked even more intimidating. The sharp angles of his jaw, the ruthless set of his mouth, and those chilling gray eyes spoke of a man who commanded empires and ended lives without a second thought. "You didn't save my life, Gabriella. You interrupted an execution. And in doing so, you embarrassed Dante Vane, the man who ordered it. Now, his men are hunting the girl in the red dress. Get in the car, or you won't live to see the sunrise." The stark, blunt honesty of his words hit her like a physical blow. She realized with a sickening twist in her stomach that the men at the club weren't simple thugs, they were Mafia soldiers. Swallowing her terror, and knowing she had no real choice, she climbed into the luxurious leather interior of the SUV. As they drove through the neon-lit streets of Chicago, Stefano remained silent, studying her profile. "Why did you do it?" he finally asked, his tone devoid of its earlier edge, replaced by genuine bewilderment. "People in this city run from gunfire. They don't jump in front of it for a stranger." "I'm a nurse," Gabriella replied, her voice gaining strength as her anger began to replace her fear. "I took an oath to preserve life. I don't care who you are. I saw a man about to be murdered, and I did the only thing I could think of to stop it." "Your nobility is a luxury you can no longer afford," Stefano said softly, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid from a hidden compartment. "You stepped into a war zone, Gabriella. Dante Vane runs the city's worst trades, human trafficking, narcotics. My family controls the ports, and I've locked him out. He wants me dead so he can flood the streets. By saving me, you've aligned yourself with the Rizzo family in his eyes." Gabriella felt a surge of moral revulsion. She spent her life patching up the victims of gang violence, the collateral damage of men, exactly like the one sitting next to her. "I am not aligned with you," she spat, refusing the drink. "I save lives. You destroy them. I want out of this." Stefano's eyes hardened, a flash of something wounded but quickly concealed crossing his features. "It's too late for that," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You are marked. The only place you are safe now is by my side. From this moment on, you are under my protection. And if I refuse, then I will assign 6 men to follow you everywhere you go, to stand outside your hospital, to sleep outside your apartment," Stefano stated, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "But it won't be enough. Dante uses leverage. He will target your family. He will target your friends. He will burn your world down to get to me through you." Gabriella closed her eyes, the crushing weight of reality settling over her. She was trapped. Her desperate act of kindness had become a cage of iron and shadow. The transition from a cramped, walk-up apartment to the sprawling, heavily fortified Rizzo estate on the shores of Lake Michigan was a jarring shock to Gabriella's system. It was a gilded cage, beautiful but suffocating. The mansion was a masterpiece of classic architecture, filled with priceless art and silent, observant staff. Everywhere she went, the heavy presence of armed guards followed. Stefano had made a bold, calculated move. To ensure Dante Vane understood that Gabriella was untouchable, Stefano had leaked a story to the underground channels. The girl in the red dress was not a random civilian, but his secret fiancée. She was now, for all intents and purposes, Gabriella Rizzo. The arrangement came with strict rules. She was allowed to continue working at the hospital, a non-negotiable demand she had fought fiercely for, but only under the watchful eyes of Stefano's most trusted men. Her life was meticulously scheduled and monitored. Yet, within the walls of the estate, a strange and intense dynamic began to unfold between Gabriella and Stefano. She was determined to hate him, to view him as the villain her moral compass told her he was. But the man she observed day after day defied her expectations. One evening, exhausted after a difficult shift, Gabriella found Stefano in his vast study, staring at a wall of monitors displaying the city's shipping docks. She paused in the doorway, watching him. He looked tired, the weight of his empire pulling at his shoulders. "You don't sleep," she observed, stepping into the room. Stefano didn't turn around. "Sleep is a vulnerability. In my world, vulnerability is a death sentence. Your world is a disease," Gabriella said bluntly, moving to stand beside him. "I spent 4 hours today trying to save a teenager who got caught in the crossfire of a territorial dispute." "Is that your doing?" Stefano finally turned to face her, his gray eyes blazing with sudden fierce intensity. "No, it is not. My father built this empire on blood, yes. But since I took control, I have spent the last 5 years trying to drag the Rizzo name out of the gutter. I enforce strict rules. No narcotics, no trafficking. We deal in gambling, union protection, and smuggling contraband that doesn't ruin neighborhoods. Dante Vane is the one putting guns in the hands of children." Gabriella was taken aback by the raw passion in his voice. "If you hate it so much, why not just walk away?" "Because if I walk away, a vacuum is created," Stefano explained. Stepping closer to her, the sheer physical presence of him overwhelming. "Dante will step in. He will take the ports. He will bring in women, children, and drugs by the container load. I am the only dam holding back the flood, Gabriella. I do terrible things so that worse things cannot happen. I am a necessary evil." For the first time, Gabriella saw the man beneath the monster. She saw a man trapped by his lineage, fighting a lonely war to clean up a poisoned legacy. The moral lines she had drawn so clearly in her mind began to blur. She realized with a terrifying jolt that the disgust she expected to feel towards him was slowly being replaced by a profound, dangerous respect. And worse, she felt a magnetic, undeniable pull toward him, an attraction born of their shared resilience. "You're trying to save the city," she whispered, her eyes searching his. "But who saves you?" Stefano reached out, his calloused fingers gently brushing a stray curl from her cheek. The touch sent a jolt of electricity down her spine. "Until that night at the club," he murmured, his gaze dropping to her lips, "I didn't think anyone could." The annual Heart of Chicago charity gala was neutral ground, held in a magnificent ballroom dripping with crystal chandeliers. It was the one night a year where politicians, socialites, and the city's highest-ranking criminals mingled under the guise of philanthropy. Stefano had decided it was time to make their fictional engagement public, to solidify Gabriella's untouchable status. Gabriella stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror in her suite, staring at the woman reflected back. She wore a bespoke gown of midnight blue silk that moved like liquid glass, diamonds heavy at her throat. She looked every inch a Mafia queen, a far cry from the nurse who wore stained scrubs. When she descended the grand staircase, Stefano was waiting at the bottom. The breath physically left his lungs as he looked at her. He offered his arm, his eyes dark, with an emotion that made her pulse race. "You look stunning," he said softly. "Remember the plan. Stay by my side. Smile. Give them nothing. The gala was a minefield of whispered rumors and calculating stares. Gabriella played her part perfectly, her posture regal, her smile polite but distant. She could feel the power radiating from Stefano, the way the room subtly parted for him, the mixture of fear and respect he commanded. Halfway through the evening, the air temperature seemed to drop. A man approached them, his smile sharp as a razor, his eyes devoid of any human warmth. It was Dante Vane. Stefano, Dante purred, his gaze sliding possessively over Gabriella. I must admit, when I heard the rumors, I thought you were bluffing, but here she is, the little nurse with the big heart. Stefano's grip on Gabriella's waist tightened to the point of pain, but his face remained an impassive mask. Dante, keep your eyes in your head, or I'll remove them for you. Dante laughed, a dry, rattling sound. So protective. It's a shame, really. A woman this beautiful shouldn't be tied to a sinking ship. Your time is coming to an end, Rizzo. The ports will be mine. He leaned closer to Gabriella, his voice a venomous whisper. Watch your back, sweet girl. Heroes die young in our world. Before Dante could pull away, Stefano's hand shot out, grabbing Dante by the lapel with terrifying speed. The surrounding guards tensed, hands diving into their jackets. The entire ballroom held its breath. If you or your men come within a mile of her, Stefano said, his voice a low, lethal growl that carried across the silent room, I won't just kill you, Dante. I will dismantle your entire family root and branch. I will erase your name from the earth. Do you understand me? Dante's smile faltered, genuinely unnerved by the absolute promise of violence in Stefano's eyes. He wrenched himself free and backed away, disappearing into the crowd. The tension broke, but the adrenaline remained. The orchestra struck up a slow waltz to cover the awkward silence. Stefano pulled Gabriella onto the dance floor, pulling her flush against his chest. They moved in perfect, fluid sync. Gabriella looked up at him, her heart pounding. You meant that, she whispered. Every word. Yes, Stefano replied, his eyes locked on hers, the mask completely gone, leaving only raw, burning intensity. I never planned on this, Gabriella. I never planned on you. But you are mine to protect now. I will burn this city to ash before I let anyone touch you. In the middle of the crowded ballroom, surrounded by enemies and secrets, Gabriella realized the terrifying truth. She wasn't just pretending anymore. The fierce, unyielding protection he offered, the hidden nobility of his crusade, she had fallen deeply, irrevocably in love with the Mafia boss. The illusion of safety shattered 3 days later, not from the outside, but from within. Stefano had been making rapid, aggressive moves to cripple Dante Vane's smuggling routes, gathering evidence to hand over to a contact he secretly maintained in the FBI, a risky endgame to finally legitimize his family. He was close, too close. It happened during a routine shift change at the hospital. Gabriella was walking to her car, flanked by 2 of Stefano's most loyal guards. Suddenly, the screech of tires echoed through the garage. A van violently rammed the guard's vehicle, pinning one man. Before the other guard could draw his weapon, he was shot in the chest by someone stepping out of the shadows. Gabriella screamed, dropping her bag, rushing to the fallen guard to apply pressure to his wound. She looked up, expecting to see Dante's thugs. Instead, she locked eyes with Marco, Stefano's underboss and oldest friend. Marco? What are you doing? She gasped, her hands slick with blood. Marco's face was twisted in a mixture of regret and cold ambition. Stefano is weak, Gabriella. He's destroying the family business trying to be a saint. Dante offered me the empire. All I have to do is deliver you. He grabbed her roughly by the arm, dragging her away from the dying man and throwing her into the back of the van. The doors slammed shut, plunging her into darkness. When she awoke, she was tied to a metal chair in a damp, freezing warehouse. The smell of rust and stagnant water filled the air. Dante Vane stood before her, smoking a cigar, looking immensely pleased with himself. Well, well, the nurse is awake, Dante sneered. I've sent a message to your fiancé. He has exactly 1 hour to sign over the deeds to the port authorities to my shell corporations, or I start sending you back to him in pieces." Gabriella's heart hammered, but she forced herself to breathe. She remembered Stefano's words. Vulnerability is a death sentence. She would not give Dante the satisfaction of her fear. She squared her shoulders and met his gaze with absolute defiance. "He won't do it. Stefano is a better man than you will ever be. He won't sacrifice the city to a monster." Dante struck her across the face, the force snapping her head back. She tasted blood, but she smiled, a cold, mocking smile that she had learned directly from Stefano. Infuriated, Dante stormed out, leaving her guarded by 2 heavily armed men. One of them, a younger man, was pale and sweating profusely, clutching his side. Gabriella's medical instincts flared. She noticed the dark stains spreading across his shirt. He had been hit in the crossfire at the garage. "You're bleeding out," Gabriella said, her voice calm and authoritative. The young guard looked at her, startled. "That's an arterial bleed. You have maybe 20 minutes before you go into hemorrhagic shock. Let me help you." "Shut up," the older guard snapped. "If he dies, Dante will blame you for not backing him up." Gabriella pushed, using every ounce of psychological manipulation she could muster. "Untie my hands. Let me pack the wound. I'm a nurse. I can keep him alive." The guards exchanged a panicked look. The younger one nodded weakly. Reluctantly, the older guard stepped forward and cut the zip ties on her wrists, keeping his gun aimed squarely at her head. Gabriella moved quickly, tearing the young man's shirt to expose the wound. She asked for a first aid kit. As the older guard turned to retrieve one from a wall cabinet, Gabriella saw her opening. She grabbed a heavy steel wrench left on a nearby crate and swung it with all her might, striking the older guard in the back of the knee. As he buckled, she brought the wrench down on his hand, causing him to drop the gun. She kicked the weapon away into the shadows. She wasn't a fighter, but she was a survivor. She grabbed the young, wounded guard by the collar. "Tell me exactly where we are," she demanded, "or I let you bleed out right here." Stefano Rizzo was a man possessed. When he received the video message of Gabriella bound to the chair, the civilized veneer he had cultivated for 5 years burned away instantly, leaving only the ruthless, terrifying apex predator of the Chicago underworld. He didn't negotiate. He mobilized his entire syndicate. Armed with a small army of his most elite enforcers, Stefano descended upon Dante's warehouse district. He didn't come to talk. He came to eradicate. The resulting firefight was a cinematic explosion of violence, shattering the quiet night with the roar of automatic weapons and the crunch of tearing metal. Stefano moved through the chaos like a ghost, his gray eyes dead and merciless, taking down Dante's men with clinical precision. Inside the warehouse, Gabriella heard the eruption of gunfire. She knew Stefano had come for her. She had tied off the young guard's wound and barricaded the door to the holding room, but she knew it wouldn't hold Dante for long. The door splintered and crashed inward. Dante burst in, desperate and enraged, a gun in his hand. Seeing his guards incapacitated, he lunged for Gabriella, intent on using her as a human shield. But Gabriella was ready. She had found a heavy, industrial fire extinguisher in the corner. As Dante reached for her, she pulled the pin and blasted him squarely in the face with the blinding, suffocating chemical foam. Dante shrieked, dropping his gun and clawing at his burning eyes. Gabriella scrambled backward just as the far wall of the warehouse was practically blown open. Stefano stepped through the smoke and debris, his suit ruined, an assault rifle in his hands, looking like an avenging demon. He saw Gabriella, unharmed, and a fraction of the tension left his rigid frame. Then his eyes locked onto Dante, who was stumbling blindly, trying to wipe the foam from his face. Stefano crossed the room in 3 strides, kicking Dante to his knees and pressing the hot muzzle of his rifle directly against Dante's forehead. "Give me one reason," Stefano whispered, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't end your miserable bloodline right here." Gabriella watched, her heart in her throat. She knew that if Stefano pulled that trigger, he would cross a line he had spent years trying to step back from. he would become the very monster he was fighting against. The cycle of blood would never end. "Stefano, don't!" Gabriella shouted, running to him and grabbing his arm. Her hands were warm against his cold, tense muscles. "Look at me! Look at me!" Stefano's jaw clenched, his eyes locked on the man who had ordered her death. "If you shoot him, he wins," Gabriella pleaded, her voice trembling but fiercely convicted. "He drags you down into the dark with him. You are better than this. You promised me you were building something better. Prove it." In the distance, the wailing of police sirens grew louder. Stefano had coordinated with Agent Hayes. The FBI was minutes away, ready to raid the port based on the evidence Stefano had provided. Stefano looked down at Gabriella, seeing the absolute faith and desperate love in her eyes. The rage slowly drained from him. He lowered the weapon. He grabbed Dante by the collar and dragged him toward the loading bay doors, throwing him onto the concrete just as a fleet of FBI tactical vehicles swarmed the compound. Agent Hayes stepped out, his weapon drawn. Stefano raised his hands slowly, a gesture of surrender. But his eyes never left Gabriella. "Dante Vane," Stefano announced clearly over the noise of the sirens. "And my former underboss, Marco. You'll find all the evidence of their trafficking rings in the office upstairs. The Rizzo family is done. The empire is officially dissolved. The dismantling of the Rizzo syndicate took 2 long, grueling years. Stefano cooperated fully with the federal authorities. Because of his instrumental role in taking down Dante Vane's expansive trafficking network, and because he had spent years operating his own businesses without violent offenses, Stefano negotiated a complex plea deal. He surrendered all illegal assets, paid massive restitution, and served a minimal, highly secure sentence, utilizing his vast wealth and legal team to navigate the system. During that time, Gabriella didn't wait. She used her characteristic resilience to finish her advanced nursing degree, becoming a top nurse practitioner in trauma care. She visited Stefano every week, their bond growing unbreakable through the thick glass of the visiting room. The Mafia boss had fallen, but the man had risen. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Gabriella stood outside the gates of the federal facility. She wore a simple white dress, the polar opposite of the red silk, from the night their lives collided. The heavy steel doors opened, and Stefano walked out. He wore a simple civilian suit, his hair slightly longer, but his gray eyes were clear, bright, and completely free of the shadows that had haunted him for a lifetime. He saw her, and a slow, genuine smile spread across his face, a look of pure, unadulterated peace. He dropped his duffel bag and ran to her. Gabriella threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder as he spun her around, laughing. It was a kiss not of desperation or diversion, but of profound, hard-won freedom. "You're late," she teased, tears streaming down her face. "I had an empire to give away," Stefano replied softly, resting his forehead against hers. "I am a poor man now, Gabriella, just a civilian starting a legitimate shipping logistics company. Are you sure you want to be seen with me?" "I saved your life once, Stefano Rizzo," she said, her eyes shining with unwavering love and fierce dignity. "I intend to keep you around, to make sure the investment pays off." They walked away from the gates, hand in hand, leaving the darkness behind them. The journey had been paved with intense conflict and moral injustice, but through resilience and truth, they had forged their own redemption. The girl in the red dress had not just saved a stranger, she had saved a soul, and together, they stepped into the light of a new dawn. If Gabriella and Stefano's journey of sacrifice, danger, and redemption kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button and share this video with your fellow drama and romance lovers. We pour our hearts into crafting these deep, cinematic stories, and your support means the world to us. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming thrilling tales of love, suspense, and unexpected twists. What would you have done in Gabriella's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. Would you risk it all for a stranger? Thank you for watching. Keep reading, and we'll see you in the next incredible story.